A company raised $1.75 billion. It launched. It died. The entire life cycle from ribbon cutting to obituary took 6 months. That is not a business story. That is a controlled demolition. To understand how this happened, you need to understand who built it. Jeffrey Katzenberg was not a nobody. He ran Disney's animation studio during its renaissance in the late 80s and 90s, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. He then co-founded DreamWorks. The man had Shrek money and then some. His CEO was Meg Whitman, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, former CEO of eBay. She had managed companies worth tens of billions of dollars. Between the two of them, they had roughly 6 decades of executive experience. Remember that. The idea was Quibi, short for Quick Bites, a streaming platform built exclusively for mobile phones, delivering premium Hollywood content in episodes of 10 minutes or less. Katzenberg called it the third wave of television. The first wave was broadcast. The second was streaming. This was the third. On paper, the logic was not completely insane. Americans were spending, by some estimates, over 3 hours a day on their phones. YouTube had proven short-form video was viable. The gap Katzenberg identified was quality. Nobody was making prestige television for your commute, so he went to Hollywood and he spent Steven Spielberg, Jennifer Lopez, Idris Elba, Chrissy Teigen. Katzenberg reportedly signed deals with nearly every major studio and hundreds of creators. The content budget alone was reportedly over $1 billion. Investors did not hesitate. Disney, NBC Universal, Warner Media, Goldman Sachs, Alibaba, the who's who of global capital wrote checks. By the time Quibi launched in April 2020, it had raised $1.75 billion. It had not yet shown the public a single episode. The fundraising was, by any measure, extraordinary. The confidence required to raise that sum on a concept, not a product, a concept, is a specific kind of audacity that only comes from having been right before. Katzenberg had been right before. He assumed the pattern would hold. There were warning signs. During development, internal tests reportedly showed that users were confused by Quibi's core interface. The platform was designed exclusively for vertical and horizontal mobile viewing, with a feature called Turnstile that rotated the frame depending on how you held your phone. Clever in a pitch deck, annoying in a waiting room. More critically, Quibi had no way to share content. No screenshots, no clips, no social sharing built into the platform. In 2020, when the entire discovery engine for streaming content was social media. Their market research said this was intentional, a premium, distraction-free experience. Their users called it a deal-breaker. Then came April 6, 2020. Launch day. Quibi went live on iOS and Android. It immediately hit the top of the App Store charts. Downloads surged. Katzenberg and Whitman celebrated. For approximately 2 weeks, the numbers looked defensible. Then the free trial ended. Quibi had offered 90 days free. When the billing cycle arrived, users did not convert. Churn, the rate at which subscribers cancel, was reportedly catastrophic. An estimated 8% of trial users became paying subscribers. The industry benchmark is closer to 50 to 60% for a well-positioned product. Katzenberg had an explanation. The pandemic. Quibi was built for people on the move, commuters, travelers, people with 5 minutes between meetings. And in April 2020, nobody was moving. The entire country was sitting at home in front of large televisions with access to Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max. This was not an unreasonable observation. It was also completely irrelevant to the outcome. Because Quibi had a second problem the pandemic had nothing to do with. You could not watch it on your television. A billion-dollar streaming service with no TV app. At launch. They eventually added Chromecast and AirPlay support in June 2020, 2 months after launch, when reviews were already written and habits were already formed. In streaming, first impressions are not recoverable. The window is measured in days, not months. By July 2020, internal metrics were reportedly dire. The platform had an estimated 3 million subscribers against a year-one target of 7.4 million. Revenue projections were being revised downward. Advertisers who had paid a reported $150 million in pre-launch commitments were watching and calculating. Katzenberg reportedly reached out to potential acquirers: Facebook, Twitter, NBC Universal, Snapchat, every major platform that might absorb Quibi's content library and infrastructure. Every single one passed. When a company cannot give itself away, the market has delivered its verdict. On October 21, 2020, Quibi announced it was shutting down. The company had been operating for 191 days. It had spent an estimated $1.75 billion. It would return an estimated $350 million to investors, what was left of the cash reserves. The content library was quietly sold off. Most of it vanished. Katzenberg later said, in a moment of candor that deserves to be studied in business schools, that the failure was due to one of two things. Either the idea was fundamentally flawed, or the execution was fundamentally flawed. He said he did not know which one. After spending $1.75 billion, he did not know which one. For what it's worth, the evidence suggests both. The idea assumed that people wanted premium Hollywood content in 10-minute segments on their phones while mobile. The execution assumed that launching a social platform without social features, in the middle of a global pandemic, without a television app, would still be fine. Neither assumption survived contact with reality. Here is what the Quibi autopsy actually teaches. Prestige and capital are not substitutes for product-market fit. Katzenberg and Whitman had access to every resource except the one that mattered most: honest early feedback from real users with real stakes. The 90-day free trial was not a validation strategy. It was a delay of the moment of truth. The deeper lesson is about conviction. Katzenberg was so certain the idea was right that contradictory data was reframed rather than absorbed. The pandemic was not the cause of Quibi's failure. It was the occasion. The failure was already built into the product the day the first check cleared. $1.75 billion, 191 days, 0 acquirers. That is not a pivot story. That is not a cautionary tale about timing. That is what happens when the smartest people in a room stop asking whether anyone actually wants what they're building. If you found this story extraordinary, wait until you hear what happened when a different set of confident executives decided they could build a social network for professionals and accidentally created one of the strangest corporate acquisitions in Silicon Valley history. Subscribe for more hidden empires.